Hello everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. If you're new, my name is Sarah, and if you're returning, it's nice to see you again. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my August reads. I cannot believe it has already been another month. It feels like yesterday I was doing my July reads. So without further ado, let's get on to them. So the first book of this month is Yes, No, Maybe So by Becky Albertalli and Aisha Seed. I don't know how to pronounce the names. I'm just trying to figure it out. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. And the main reason being was it was a very good trope. It was childhood friends to lovers, and basically they hadn't seen each other in years. So this is Jamie and Maya, and their mums used to always hang out when they were younger. They'd go to this play area, I don't know what it's called now, and they used to hang out all the time, and they hadn't seen each other in a long time. They meet up again through Rossum's campaign. He's a local politician who's trying to win the election, and Jamie is campaigning because his cousin is part of it, so his sister and Jamie have been involved throughout the whole campaign. Maya gets involved because she makes a deal with her parents that if she starts to campaign and help out, she can get a car. Maya is very reliant on other people, which she doesn't like. Her best friend Sarah is one of her only friends, and so she's starting to feel a bit left out because Sarah's a year older than her, so she's getting ready for college, so she's spending a lot of time with her roommate. She's also busy working. She has 2 jobs, so she's trying to afford to go to college. So there's a whole issue with her and Sarah throughout the book, which was interesting because the best friends, Maya's in a different financial position to Sarah and also a different life, and so it's very fascinating to see how they both cope with situations. But yeah, the book is a dual point perspective, which I also really loved because I always love hearing each side of the story. I feel like it's very interesting and fascinating. The only thing I didn't like about this book, as I said, it was long. I know it was about campaigning and that was how they bonded, I get that, but I just really felt that it took so long for them to actually start to have feelings for each other and do something about it. Like, I think it was in the last 150 pages that they started doing anything about it. It was also very interesting because Jamie is Jewish and Maya is Muslim, so it was very interesting to see their different culture, their different perspectives and ideas on relationships. So I thought that was a very good implementation, and it was just something different, not such a straight up childhood friends to lovers sort of thing. And later on in the book for Maya, the campaigning becomes quite personal because the opposition is trying to implement a ban on hijabs basically, which obviously goes against Muslim faith. It was very interesting to see how that implemented and merged into the storyline, but I just felt overall this book was very well written. I just felt some parts were really drawn out and unnecessary. So overall, I loved the trope, I loved storyline. I just did not really enjoy how much the storyline stretched out at points, if that makes any sense. The next book for this month is The Last Anniversary by Leanne Moriarty. This is the second book I've read of hers, and I love her. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 only because one thing I found about her books is they can be quite long, but they are very enjoyable, so it is worth it, and you don't feel like you're painstakingly trying to get your way through the book. This book is about mainly Sophie, however you do hear points of view from all other different characters. Just to give you the family tree, because you're gonna need it, you have Sophie by herself. Sophie used to date a guy called Thomas. Now Thomas is related to the family that lives on Scribbly Gum Island, which is known for its Monroe baby mystery, where the couple, Jack and Alice, had been said to disappear and leave their 2-week-old child alone, which is where Connie and Rose found them. They are sisters, and then basically the baby that was found by them is named Enigma. Enigma had 2 children, Margie and Laura. Margie had 2 children of her own, which were Veronica and Thomas, and Laura had Grace. Grace is married to Callum, and they also had a little baby boy. Thomas also got married himself. I can't remember the girl's name, but it's not that important. But basically, those people I mentioned, you hear their perspectives throughout the book, except for Connie, because Connie dies at the start of the book. So her will is what gets Sophie back into the family dynamics, because Connie leaves Sophie her house. So Sophie moves onto the island because she absolutely loves the island, always adored it, but Thomas didn't like taking her there because he didn't like the island himself. So she used to always go with her mum and dad every year, and so now she lives on the island, and there is a lot of drama. By the end of the book you find out what happened in the mystery, what happened to Alice and Jack, and you also learn about relationships, and you see relationships blossom, you see relationships deplete. Like, it's a whole different thing, and I absolutely love it. I just want to give some trigger warnings on the book, just because I feel like it's important to always let people know what the book has in store before you read a book, because sometimes you just don't want to be surprised. This book deals with postpartum depression, which is what Grace has. There's also talk of suicide, weight loss. I know that might not be a trigger for a lot of people, but for some people that might be. And that's for Maggie, the way Maggie goes into it. For some people it can be triggering, so I still want to point that one out there. But overall, this book is a very good read, and if you're looking for a new Australian author, I would recommend her. A lot of her books are Australian based. The other book I've read is The Three Wishes by her, and I absolutely loved that book. I have Big Little Lies in my TBR, which I want to read, but yeah, a good read, no doubt. The next book of the month is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this book obviously a 5 out of 5 stars. I love Taylor, I love her book. I've read Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and this book, so I've just got to read Malibu Rising, which is on my TBR. This book, if you haven't read it, which if you haven't, where have you been? In synopsis, it's about Daisy Jones, obviously, and a band called the Six. The Six is Billy, Karen, Graham, Warren, Eddie. I've forgotten someone else, but I can't find them, so please pardon me. I don't know the sixth member. I can't remember. I also want to quickly mention the trigger warnings in this book. There is drugs, alcohol, a bit of domestic violence, not anything incredibly crazy, but still there is a hint of it. And there's also abortion, but mainly drugs and alcohol. It starts off with Billy's band and how they formed, and then it goes on to how Daisy actually becomes part of the band. It also follows their individual story and journey throughout the book, from Billy meeting his wife Camilla to Graham and his relationship with Karen, and how the band members feel as things chop and change, which I really love. I also loved, this book is another point of view book. I just can't get enough of them, and it is in the form of like a interview script, which I loved. Like, I felt like, you know, like a current affair or 60 Minutes or something, where like the interviewer was sitting here and the person was sitting across, and just the entire book I was seeing them change in the seats. Like, if Graham was talking, Graham was sitting there, or if Billy was talking, Billy was sitting there. But then I could also imagine the tours and them in the rehearsal rooms and all that, and I'm going really, wow, hold on, and all of that. And I just loved the book so much. I loved the perspective. It was just so easy to read and so fluent, and there was no issues whatsoever. I also loved Camilla. Loved Camilla. Her relationship with Billy, the way she went about it was just phenomenal. Like, oh, she's just a phenomenal character. I just feel like the faith and trust she put into Billy was something that a lot of people don't do in their relationship. Camilla and Billy had is something you don't necessarily see all the time. A lot of musicians don't last because they're always on tour, or they're not together, so they don't know what the other person's doing, and it's very hard to, you know, maintain trust and faith in your partner. Whether it just worked with Camilla and Billy. Camilla wanted to be a stay-at-home mum, she always did, and Billy learnt to, you know, put aside his career when he was at home to be with Camilla and the kids, and then when he went back out, he focused on his career, and Camilla respected that, and they just worked. I don't know, I just loved it. And you think even with Daisy in there could be some issues. I'm not going to spoil anything, but even just that dynamic, like, Camilla is a strong woman, and I just loved it. I also loved the end part. I literally almost cried because I just loved who was actually interviewing them. I didn't even care about who was interviewing them until the end of the book, and oh my god, I thought it was the most genuinely sweet thing in the entire world. This book was ended so well. It was so sweet, and I felt like the entire book gave me home cozy vibes, just because even though there was issues and they were always on tour and everything, you still felt like you were in the moment with all of them. Like, it felt like A Star Is Born at some points. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know what else to say about it. It was just a really good book. So I would definitely recommend it, especially for those of you who like reading but don't necessarily like, you know, the pages like this. It's just very simple, straightforward, easy to read, easy to follow. I don't know about the audiobook. I only mention this because one of my friends, Leilani, she read the audiobook to begin with and she just couldn't follow all the characters, so she ended up just reading it like this format, in a book format. But I do also know some booktubers have read it as an audiobook and they loved hearing the different voices of the cast, but it just really depends. I've also heard this is turning into a movie. Yes, please. Colleen Hoover, It Ends With Us. 5 out of 5 star read. I was not aware of who Colleen Hoover was until BookTube and Bookstagram and BookTok started talking about her. I was not disappointed, and I'm so glad the hype actually lived up to her name, because I was scared it wouldn't. Obviously anyone who hears about a hype of a book or an author and then you pick up one of the books and you're like, oh, it's not that good, which is what happened with Six of Crows, but we'll get into that later. This book follows a girl called Lily and her journey basically as a child, but also as an adult mainly. She writes journal entries to Ellen DeGeneres because she makes her happy and she really loves watching her show every afternoon. This book, trigger warning, touches on domestic violence. I would actually say psychological abuse as well. And yeah, so basically she moves away from her hometown to Boston because, number one, she wants to get away from her father. Her father was abusive to her mother and she just couldn't handle sitting there watching her mother constantly get abused, and she wasn't able to do anything about it. And so Lily has always promised herself she'll never put herself in that position. Her dad at the start of the book dies from cancer, so that's how she left the town, because obviously her dad was physically unable to move anymore, so she felt this was the time to leave. She met Ryle on a balcony on top of a rooftop, and they were both going through really shitty days, which I'm not going to spoil because you find out what Ryle's shitty day was later on in the book, but you obviously know what Lily's is. Atlas comes in because Atlas is the teenage boy she was going out with as a teenager, not a child, I shouldn't say child, a teenager. He was a senior and she was, I don't know what she was, I can't remember, but she was definitely younger than him. You hear the story about Atlas as you're hearing a story about Ryle, and the thing I loved about this book is the way Colleen Hoover wrote it. You just so torn with so many things. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but if you feel the confusion and hurt that Lily feels, which takes, I don't know how you write it like that, but I was sitting there like, what the hell? What do I think? What do I want to happen? And honestly, I was feeling the same way Lily was, which was insane that you could relate to a character in a situation you have never been involved in, if that makes sense. To be able to feel the way that character felt, that takes a lot, and Hoover, she did well with it. And Colleen just was phenomenal at that. That's what I loved, is throughout the whole book you felt like you were in Lily's body and you were going through every experience with her. And oh, Atlas, I love Atlas. I love Atlas. Just the way he was implemented into the book was crazy and so good. Yeah, the whole journey with all three characters, I loved it. And I loved the ending. The ending was amazing. I really wish there was a sequel to this. I don't know how you could write an entire book about a sequel, but I know it was a happy ending, but like, I wanna see it. I wanna read about it, you know? Loved this book till the end of time. I would recommend in a heartbeat. I couldn't put it down. I read it in 3 days, which is very quick for me. Okay, so the final book I read this month was Six of Crows. This is by Lee Bardugo. I don't know how to pronounce that. I gave this book a 4-star read. It has been also all over BookTok and BookTube and Bookstagram, but it didn't live up to the hype for me. I felt it was very long. At some points it was dragged out. For me, one of the things that annoyed me the most is that every time the characters got into danger, the danger was like every 5 minutes. So they'd get over one hurdle and then there'd be another one. And for me, that just kind of annoyed me. However, the thing that kept it a 4-star read was the way they got out of the situation. was actually very clever and very cool. So even though this book felt long-winded and there was parts where it just pained me to read, I did enjoy it overall, and I did love the characters. It follows a guy called Cas Brecker and his journey in creating a crew to break into the ice court, to break out, I cannot pronounce the guy's name, but a guy who's basically made this potion that when given to a grisha, which if you don't know what a grisha is someone with magical powers. So you've got a fabricator, a heart, someone with a heart thing. I just want you to know I'm sitting here editing like me trying to describe to you this book. I am very sorry how badly I'm describing it to you, but number one, characters' names were very difficult to pronounce. Some places in the world were very difficult to pronounce. In general, it was just very hard to pronounce things and also very hard to describe things. So bear in mind, keep in mind, I am very sorry, and I'm also cringing just alongside you. There's multiple ones. I just cannot, the only one that I can think of off the top of my head is a fabricator, but basically, if you give them that potion, their powers are enhanced times 1,000. Like, it's bad. You learn about why the scientists made it, how it came to be and all that, but you also follow the journeys of 6 people, the members of 6 Crows. So you have Kaz, you have Inej, you have Nina, you have Martius, Jesper and Wylan. You learn about each character as the book progresses and you get their points of view, which I really loved. But the characters I loved. I fell in love with all the characters and yeah, I loved them. I don't know, this is probably what saved the book at a 4 stars. The fact that every way they got out of a situation was really witty and clever, but also the characters and learning about their stories I absolutely loved. There is the second book, Crooked Kingdom. I will probably end up reading, but not right now. I need to take a break from this book. This book took me a long time to read because I just could not stay engrossed in it for long enough. So that was the only issue. Yeah, it was just like stop and go for me, the entire book. But I would recommend, if you love a fantasy, crime, violence, witty humor, danger, a lot of things. I love this book and I did love it overall, I did, but there were just a few things that annoyed me at points, to the point I was sitting there and I was like, do I give it a 3.5 or do a 4? Do a 3.5 or a 4? And I was like, no, it's definitely a 4 because I did love it overall and I do want to pick up the second book, but there was just stuff that did not really work well with me. So there's all the books I read for August. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, please give a big thumbs up because it lets me know you enjoyed this video and it also supports my channel. Subscribe if you're new because I do have book videos here and there on my channel, as it is something I love and I would love to share with you all a little bit more. And I will see you all in my next video very, very soon. Goodbye.